Hello, my name is Riley Urton, and I'm going to do my seminar presentation on the abominable history of the man with copper fingers. This was a story written by Dorothy Sayers in 1928. It was published in a publication with a dozen or so other short stories all at the same time. Dorothy Sayers was writing in the golden age of detective fiction, or the pulp era, the pulp fiction era, which was when a lot of stories were published in monthly or weekly magazines with cheap paper and produced in mass amounts. So this story takes place in London in a gentleman's club called the Egotistics Club, and I interpreted it as a gentleman's club for strange stories. So they gathered around to entertain each other with interesting or peculiar stories. So we begin this short story with Verdon, who is a young actor. He's stereotypically handsome, he's attractive and athletic, and he begins his story with an interesting encounter he had. So he was on cast for a movie contract, and he ends up meeting Lauder, who's a wealthy man who owns a big fancy house and lots of art and antiques, and he becomes friends with him basically. So Lauder opens up his house to Verdon, and they end up staying together for a while and become pretty close friends. Lauder tells him a lot of secrets and allows him to have a lot of freedom in his house and a lot of access to his parties and wealthy events. So Lauder has a girlfriend named Maria, and it's more of a fixed deal than a relationship. And Maria ends up getting tired of it and wants to get out of the relationship and move on with her life. She tells this to Verdon, and it takes an interesting turn when Verdon goes off to war. So Verdon comes back from the war and doesn't really have anything for him. He's kind of stuck in the dust. And Lauder ends up offering his house to him for him to stay there for a while until he can get his feet picked up under him. So when he's with Lauder, he starts talking about Maria and asking where she is because she's not there anymore. And Lauder explains to him that Maria needed to leave, that things didn't work out anymore, and that they broke up. Well, during the time that he's there, he ends up seeing this peculiar piece of furniture sculpture of a woman that looks just like Maria. And Lauder explains that it was after her. It was a dedication to Maria. And then, after we get to just the everyday stuff with Lauder and Verdon being back in the same house after the war, we have a new character that comes in. Lord Peter Wimsey is a very aristocrat. He's the owner. He's very high up in the Egotists Club, and he takes over the story basically. He's the classic detective person. He's the hero of the story. And he explains to us that Lauder is convinced that Verdon and Maria were having an affair. And when Maria said that she wanted to leave, he figured it was because she wanted to go and be with Verdon. And Lauder felt very hurt and rejected, so he got angry and ended up killing Maria. And the sculpture that Verdon found in his home was actually Maria encased in a sculpture material. And so Lord Peter Wimsey saves Verdon. He goes into Lauder's house and warns him that he needs to leave, and ends up finding Lauder in the middle of his master plan, trying to kill Verdon, because he wanted to kill Verdon and create a ironic sculpture of the two lovers and have it in his home. So when Wimsey finds Lauder, next to the vat of cyanide, which is how he killed Maria and was planning to kill Verdon, he ends up spooking him, and Lauder gets scared and stumbles and ends up falling into the cyanide himself and killing himself. So Peter Wimsey ends up telling the story about how he saved the day. He's the one that saved Verdon. He was the stereotypical detective or the hero of the story that ended up solving the crime. I interpreted the story as very ironic. The whole time, all of the characters are not quite understanding each other, and they're building on each other's miscommunications and making things worse. So Maria wanted to leave because she was no longer happy with the money and the fame, but no real relationship behind it. She wanted to find love, and she ends up telling this to Verdon. And Verdon understands because Verdon is friends with Maria. But Lauder interprets it as them having an affair because Verdon is young and handsome and athletic and the stereotypical actor. And then Lord Peter Wimsey comes in and he saves the day. He fixes all the problems, but he's kind of an outsider. He's not really a part of the story. He just takes over it in his own way. So overall, I found this story to be very ironic and two-sided, which is pretty interesting to read how the characters built off of one another to make the bad situation worse. Thank you.